Good afternoon to you. Very important numbers from our farming sector.
Absolutely, Stephen, and it shows that not just a rebound that has developed as a result of the agriculture and other sectors in our economy, but that there is some steady growth that we are seeing in the sector, which at some point in the last 10 years there were concerns that it might decline, although it is such an essential part of our economy, and it's not just for food provision but for jobs and employment as well. Also very critical. It's an opportune time to be speaking to Christo from Rheede from AgriSA as we look to global developments that have changed the way that many countries are importing and exporting food, and we are no different, and we may see the impact of that quite soon. Christo, thank you for your time. Before we get to the matters of Russia and Ukraine, let's start here at home with the GDP figures. Agriculture, again, being an outstanding performer in the market. How do you guys make sense of these numbers?
It's a real indication of the resilience of the agriculture sector in South Africa. We are blessed in many ways. We compare ourselves with many countries in other parts of the world. They do not have this very sophisticated, very advanced commercial sector that we have. And it's really a blessing in disguise. We need to be thankful, and we need to really support the sector. And we need to leverage the sector, obviously, to close the gap between developing farmers and your commercial farmers. And that's where the solution lies for South Africa, because we need to bring more black farmers into the space. But we must ensure their resilience, their sustainability and their profitability over time. And we really can take a leaf or two from the commercial sector in this regard.
As you say, there has been resilience in the sector. You have experienced significant challenges. During COVID, you were allowed to operate, but there are some structural things that are making it difficult for the industry and the sector to rise to its full potential. Let's talk about some of those.
Obviously, the biggest challenge is the cost of finance, input cost, as well as other factors such as our deplorable state of our roads. And yes, the challenge that we have sometimes in terms of importing and exporting stuff. Our harbours should be more functional and should be more optimized in many ways, and that's where government has given an undertaking now. Together with Transnet government, I hope that we will be able to turn around the situation in terms of our rail infrastructure and in terms of our harbour infrastructure. Coming back to input cost, we've seen a massive spike in the price of fertilizer, and with this conflict now between Ukraine and Russia, that price is going to increase even more. And it brings a huge pressure onto farmers. The price of diesel, given this conflict again, we're going to see a spike in the price of diesel as well. The price of electricity has gone up by more than 9%. And then cost of labor. So all of these costs brings tremendous pressure onto farmers and their ability to farm profitably. And that is our big concern at this point in time.
Not just for the farmers, but there are growing concerns for consumers that food prices are going to spike at a time where already they're just getting back, or the recovery is just starting to happen. Can we anticipate in the next few weeks or the next month that farmers will be like, well, we can only do what we can do, prices are going up?
We have experienced a couple of crises these last few years. One of them obviously was the outbreak of this pandemic, and that caused a lot of problems in the economy as a whole. Many people have lost their jobs. We have seen also marginal increases in prices. But due to our commercial farming sector, we could contain food inflation to a very large extent. Our biggest challenge now is this outbreak of conflict between Russia and Ukraine. It impacts on the entire global economy, and it will have a spillover impact on the South African economy. But remember, many people think it's the farmers that put up prices. Farmers are price takers. They are not the people who are responsible for high prices at the end of the day. They must make a living. They must eke out a living. But the price that the consumer eventually pays, that price is influenced by a whole range of local factors, but more so by a whole range of global factors. So we expect that the price of food will increase, and that is a big worry for us, because if people can't afford food, it leads to all kinds of other social ills.
I mean, let's talk about that. You say farmers are price takers, although you are the primary means of production, and that we are susceptible to global factors. Tell us a little bit about this chain effect that the war in Ukraine and Russia is going to have on our local production and prices.
Our biggest challenge, obviously, is the price of petroleum. We import a lot of our petroleum from the rest of the world, even from other parts, for example, Russia. We also import a bit of wheat from them. About 30% of our wheat comes from them. But remember, wheat is essential for flour, and flour is used for bread baking. And if we have a shortage of wheat, it will push up price, which means it will impact on the price of bread. So it's important that our government starts to assist our farmers, like the European counterparts, American counterparts, Brazilian counterparts, and Chinese counterparts are doing. They are all assisting their farmers with production support. We do not have it in South Africa, and that means that our farmers become more vulnerable over time. Yes, we had very good seasons, and we foresee that we will be able to import wheat from other countries. We will also perhaps find ways and means to optimize Sasol so that we can have a more affordable petroleum in South Africa. And if we optimize the functioning of the mine, Phalaborwa mine, the phosphate mine, we will be able to access fertilizer that's a bit more cheaper. But that means that we will have to have great cooperation between government and the sector, because ultimately it's about food security. If our country is not food secure and our people are starving, the consequences of that will be very, very serious for the country. It will lead to outbreaks of violence, such as we've seen last year in the Durban area, and if that happens on a national scale, it can really break down our country.
Christo, thank you so much for your time. That's all we have time for. There you heard it from him, Stephen. A matter of speed, accuracy and urgency in intervening so that we don't see that significant spike in food prices and that we don't feel as much the impact of the ongoing war in Russia and Ukraine.
Kopano Gumbi for that live update. Thanks very much indeed.